Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Haven Colony and watched the stars. He knew that somewhere in that darkness the aliens were coming. The Dominion had already destroyed Earth and every human world they could find. New Haven was the last place where humans still lived free. Jake turned away from the window and walked through the colony halls. 50,000 people lived here now. Most of them were refugees who had escaped from other worlds before the Dominion found them. They looked at Jake with hope in their eyes, but he could see the fear too. Everyone knew this might be their final home. The colony sat on a small planet far from the main space routes. That distance had kept them safe for 2 years, but Jake knew their luck was running out. His scouts had spotted alien ships moving closer each week. Soon, the Dominion would find them. Captain Lisa Grant met Jake in the main control room. She was the best engineer Jake had ever known, and right now she looked worried. Her team had been working deep in the mines below the colony. What they found there might change everything. "We need to talk," Lisa said. She led Jake to a secure room where no one could hear them. On her computer screen was a scan of the rock beneath the colony. Strange crystals grew in patterns that looked almost like circuits. "These crystals are not natural," Lisa explained. "They store massive amounts of energy, and they seem to respond to human thoughts somehow. My team thinks they might be part of some ancient alien technology." Jake studied the scans. The crystal formation was huge, and it went deeper than their equipment could measure. If Lisa was right about the energy storage, then these crystals could power weapons beyond anything humans had ever built. "How much energy are we talking about?" Jake asked. "Enough to destroy a star system," Lisa said quietly. "The readings are off the charts. Whatever built this wanted to create something incredibly powerful." Before Jake could respond, his communication device buzzed. Admiral Carl Thompson was calling from the USS Liberty. The admiral was humanity's highest-ranking officer, and one of the few military leaders still alive. His ship was damaged and running from Dominion forces, but he had important news. Jake listened carefully, the admiral said through the static. "Earth sent out a final transmission before the Dominion destroyed it. The message contained coordinates to something the scientists called Project Prometheus. It's an ancient alien artifact that might be our only chance to win this war." Jake felt his heart race. "What kind of artifact, sir?" "Some kind of weapon platform, left by a dead civilization. The location is 3 days from your position, but I need a massive power source to activate it." "Do you have anything that could work?" Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded. The crystals beneath New Haven might be exactly what they needed. "We might have something, Admiral. How long do we have?" "Not long. Dominion scouts are closing in on your location. They know where you are and they're bringing everything they have. This is their final push to wipe out humanity." The transmission ended with bursts of static. Jake knew that Admiral Thompson was fighting for his life out there in space. The USS Liberty was probably the last major human warship still functioning. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. "If we're going to use these crystals, we need to start mining them now. But Jake, there's something else. The energy readings are unstable. If we extract too much too fast, the whole planet could explode." "How long would it take to mine enough crystals to power this weapon platform?" Jake asked. "At least a week if we work around the clock. But the Dominion will be here in days, not weeks." Jake made his decision. "Start mining immediately. Use every piece of equipment we have. If the Dominion wants a fight, they'll get one, but we're not going down without taking some of them with us." Lisa nodded and ran toward the mines. Jake activated the colony's emergency systems and called all military personnel to their stations. Alarms began to sound throughout New Haven as families were moved to the deepest shelters. Jake walked to the communications center and sent a message to every human ship and station he could reach. "This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison commanding New Haven Colony. We have found something that might help us fight back. If any human forces are listening, please come to these coordinates. We're going to make our stand here." As Jake finished the Message red lights began flashing on the scanner displays. Dominion scout ships had entered the system. They were still far away, but they were definitely heading for New Haven. Jake looked around the control room at his small team of defenders. They had a few dozen fighters and some ground weapons, but nothing that could stop a full Dominion fleet. Their only hope was that Lisa could mine enough crystals before the aliens arrived. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Everything would be decided in the next few days on this small world at the edge of known space. Jake prayed that they would be ready. Jake remembered the day the war started. Commander Rick Palmer had led the first human expedition to meet the Dominion 5 years ago. Rick was a good man who believed that all intelligent species could find ways to live in peace. He was wrong about the Dominion. The alien collective had 5 different species working together. They controlled most of the known galaxy, and they did not like newcomers. When Rick tried to establish trade relations, the Dominion leaders told him that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to spread across the stars. "Your species advances too quickly," the Dominion commander had said. "You adapt and change in ways that threaten the stability we have built. You must be contained or eliminated." Rick had tried to reason with them, but the aliens had already made their decision. The war began 3 days later, when Dominion ships attacked the human colony on Kepler Prime. 50,000 civilians died in the first hour. Now Jake stood in the New Haven Command Center watching those same aliens approach his world. The scout ships were getting closer, and his scanners showed more ships behind them. The main Dominion fleet would arrive within hours. Staff Sergeant Amy Brooks ran into the command center carrying a modified mining laser. She had been working with the engineering teams to turn their industrial equipment into weapons. The mining lasers could cut through rocks so they might be able to damage alien armor. "We've got 12 of these ready to go," Amy reported. "The power packs will only last about 10 minutes each, but they should punch through anything the Dominion has." Jake nodded. Amy was exactly the kind of soldier humanity needed right now. She could take anything and turn it into a weapon. The Dominion had better technology, but humans had something they didn't understand. Humans never gave up. Down in the mines, Lisa's teams were working frantically to extract the strange crystals. The formations were huge and complex, like a 3-dimensional puzzle built by aliens millions of years ago. Computer specialist Tony Davis was trying to decode the patterns. "These aren't just crystals," Tony told Lisa as they stood in the main mining chamber. "There's some kind of data storage system. I'm picking up electromagnetic patterns that look like computer code." Lisa studied the readings on Tony's scanner. The crystals were definitely artificial, and they seemed to respond to human brain patterns. When the miners got close to certain formations, the crystals would glow brighter and generate more energy. What kind of aliens would build something like this? Lisa wondered. Maybe the kind that fought the Dominion before, Tony suggested. The energy signatures are incredible. Whatever species built this had technology far beyond anything we've seen. Above ground, the first Dominion ships entered the atmosphere. Jake watched them descend through the clouds like falling stars. Each ship was the size of a city block and carried enough firepower to level continents. 3 ships landed near the colony while more remained in orbit. The alien troops that emerged from the landing craft moved in perfect formation. Their armor was black and silver, and their weapons fired beams of pure energy. Jake had fought these soldiers before on other worlds, and he knew how deadly they were. But the Dominion had never fought humans on ground that humans had prepared. Amy's teams had spent weeks turning the area around New Haven into a maze of traps and hidden weapons. Every building had been fortified, and every street had escape routes. The first alien patrol entered the outer settlement area where the mining families lived. Amy was waiting for them with her modified laser weapons and a team of engineers who knew every tunnel and basement in the colony. The Dominion soldiers expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered. They expected organized resistance that followed predictable patterns. Instead, Amy's teams hit them from unexpected directions and then disappeared before the aliens could respond. Jake watched the battle through security cameras scattered around. The colony. The humans were badly outnumbered, but they were making the aliens pay for every meter of ground. Mining equipment had been turned into massive bombs, and construction vehicles had become assault platforms. In the mines, the crystal formations began to pulse with energy as the fighting intensified above. Lisa noticed that the crystals seemed to respond to human emotions. When the miners felt angry or determined, the energy output increased dramatically. "It's like they're feeding off our will to fight," Lisa told Tony. Whatever species built these understood something about the power of determination. Tony's computers finally broke through part of the alien code stored in the crystals. What he found made him call Lisa over immediately. The data fragments told the story of a species called the Architects who had fought the Dominion long ago. According to this, the Dominion wasn't always evil, Tony explained. They started as peacekeepers, but over millions of years they became afraid of change. They began destroying any species that might challenge their control. What happened to the Architects? Lisa asked. They built weapons like this crystal system and fought back. But instead of just defeating the Dominion, they transcended to a higher form of existence. They left these systems behind as tests for future species. Above ground, the battle was intensifying. More Dominion ships were landing, and Jake's forces were being pushed back toward the main colony buildings. But every meter the aliens advanced cost them soldiers and equipment. Jake received a final transmission from Admiral Thompson. The USS Liberty was under heavy attack, but the Admiral had reached the coordinates from Earth's last message. What he found there changed everything. "Jake, the artifact is real." The Admiral's voice crackled through the static. "It's a massive ring structure orbiting a neutron star. The thing is the size of a moon, and it's definitely a weapon. But I need your power source to activate it. Whatever you found down there, bring it to these coordinates." The transmission ended in an explosion of static. Jake knew that Admiral Thompson and the USS Liberty were gone, but their sacrifice had given humanity one last chance. Jake looked at the tactical display showing Dominion forces surrounding the colony. In a few hours, they would break through the outer defenses and the real battle would begin. Everything depended on whether Lisa could extract enough crystals to power the ancient weapon before New Haven fell. The Dominion attack came at dawn. Massive siege ships descended from orbit and began bombarding the outer sections of New Haven colony. The ground shook as energy beams tore through buildings and defensive positions. Jake knew they could not hold the surface for long. "All units fall back to the tunnels," Jake ordered over the communication system. "Execute Plan Gamma now." Amy Brooks and her engineering teams had spent weeks preparing the underground mining complex for exactly this moment. The tunnel system stretched for kilometers beneath the colony, and every passage had been rigged with explosives and hidden weapons. The Dominion ground forces advanced in their usual precise formations. Their black and silver armor gleamed in the smoke and fire as they moved through the ruins of the outer settlement. These alien soldiers had conquered dozens of worlds using the same methodical tactics, but they had never faced humans fighting on their home ground. As the first Dominion squads entered the tunnel entrances, Amy's teams triggered carefully placed charges. Sections of tunnel collapsed, trapping the aliens in narrow spaces where their superior numbers meant nothing. Jake led his command team deeper into the mine complex where Lisa's crews were still working frantically to extract the ancient crystals. The formations were vast and complex, and the deeper they dug, the more energy the crystals produced. Dr. Helen Carter had joined the mining operation to study the alien technology. She was a xenobiologist who had spent years studying different alien species. What she discovered about the crystals amazed her. "Jake, these formations are responding to human neural patterns in ways they never did for the Dominion," Helen explained as they stood in the main excavation chamber. "It's like they were designed specifically for species like us." "What do you mean, species like us?" Jake asked. "Aggressive, adaptable. willing to take risks that other species would consider insane. The architects who built this system understood something the Dominion never learned. Sometimes survival requires the willingness to sacrifice everything. Above them, the battle in the tunnels was becoming more intense. The Dominion had brought specialized underground assault troops equipped with weapons designed for close-quarters combat. But Amy's engineers had turned every junction and corridor into a death trap. The humans used mining charges as grenades and industrial cutting tools as weapons. They appeared from hidden passages, struck hard, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. The methodical Dominion tactics that worked so well on open battlefields became liabilities in the maze of tunnels. Lisa's teams made a breakthrough in the deepest part of the mine complex. They discovered that the crystal formations were not just energy storage devices, but part of a massive computer system. The entire planet was apparently one giant alien machine left behind by the architects. "The power output is incredible," Lisa reported to Jake. "But it's also unstable. If we extract too much energy too quickly, the entire planetary core could destabilize. We're talking about a chain reaction that could shatter the whole world." Jake looked at the tactical displays showing Dominion forces pushing deeper into the tunnel system. His teams were fighting brilliantly, but they were still vastly outnumbered. Within hours, the aliens would reach the main mining chambers. Above-ground Commander Steve Jackson led the colony's small fighter squadron in desperate attacks against the Dominion fleet. His pilots flew modified mining craft and cargo haulers against warships that outgunned them 100 to 1. But the human pilots had advantages the aliens couldn't understand. They took risks that no rational tactical computer would ever calculate. They flew through debris fields and asteroid belts using piloting skills that bordered on insanity. Steve's wing attacked a Dominion heavy cruiser by diving directly into its weapon batteries. The alien gunners couldn't track targets that flew in completely unpredictable patterns. 3 human fighters managed to punch through the cruiser's shields and deliver nuclear warheads to its reactor core. The explosion lit up the sky as the massive alien ship broke apart. It was the first major Dominion vessel that humans had destroyed. In open combat, Steve's remaining pilots cheered as they watched their enemy burn. In the tunnels, Jake received reports that Dominion forces had broken through the outer defensive rings. Amy's teams were fighting a running battle through the main passages, using every trick they had learned from years of desperate warfare. The aliens brought heavy assault mechs into the tunnels. These massive machines were designed to break through fortified positions using plasma cannons and missile launchers. But the narrow confines of the mining complex worked against them. Amy's engineers collapsed entire sections of tunnel on top of the alien mechs. They used mining equipment to create avalanches of rock and debris that buried the invaders. Every meter the Dominion advanced cost them equipment and soldiers they couldn't replace. Deep in the crystal chambers, Lisa made a desperate decision. The power readings showed that they could extract enough energy to activate the ancient weapon platform, but doing so would definitely destabilize the planet. New Haven would be destroyed, but they might be able to take the entire Dominion fleet with them. "Jake, we can do this, but everyone on the planet dies," Lisa told him over the communication system. "The energy release will crack the planetary crust and probably trigger volcanic eruptions across the entire surface." Jake looked around at his command team. These people had followed him through hell, and they were ready to follow him into death if that's what it took to give humanity a chance. The choice was simple: die fighting or die surrendering. "Do it," Jake ordered. "Extract everything the crystals can give us. If we're going out, we're taking as many of these bastards with us as possible." Lisa's teams began the final extraction process. The crystal formations began to glow with brilliant white light as massive amounts of energy built up in the alien storage systems. Warning alarms echoed through the mining complex as radiation levels spiked beyond safe limits. Above ground, the Dominion forces felt the planet beginning to shake. Their sensors detected the massive energy buildup in the core, and their commanders realized what the humans were planning. The aliens had never encountered a species crazy enough to destroy their own world, just to strike back at their enemies. Jake ordered all remaining civilians to the deepest shelters and prepared his troops for the final assault. The Dominion would try to stop the extraction process before it reached critical levels. The last battle for New Haven was about to begin in the crystal chambers deep beneath the surface. The crystal explosion lit up space like a newborn star. Jake felt the planet shake beneath his feet as massive amounts of energy tore through the core of New Haven. The ground cracked and molten rock began pushing up through the mining tunnels. Everything Lisa had predicted was happening. But the plan worked. The energy pulse from the planetary core struck the Dominion fleet in orbit with the force of a solar flare. Alien ships that had been bombarding the surface suddenly found their shields overloaded and their hull plating melting. 17 major warships were destroyed in the first few seconds. Jake and the surviving humans ran through collapsing tunnels as the planet died around them. Amy Brooks led evacuation teams to the emergency shelters where 8,000 colonists waited in terror. The shelters were deep enough to survive the initial blast, but the volcanic activity would kill everyone. Within hours, "All units to the landing bays," Jake shouted over the communication system. "We have maybe 30 minutes before this whole place becomes uninhabitable." The evacuation was chaos. Families crowded into cargo ships and mining vessels while the ground continued to shake. Buildings collapsed as lava flows reached the surface. New Haven Colony was dying, but its people were still fighting to survive. Lisa had managed to extract 3 stable crystal cores before the planetary system went critical. These crystals contained enough energy to power the ancient weapon platform that Admiral Thompson had discovered. But getting them to the coordinates would require a miracle. Captain Ben Foster commanded the destroyer USS Defiance, one of only 5 human warships that had survived the war. His ship was damaged and understaffed, but it was the largest vessel available for the evacuation. Ben pushed his engines beyond safe limits to reach New Haven before the planet completely collapsed. The Defiance landed in a storm of ash and debris. Ben's crew worked frantically to load refugees and supplies while volcanic eruptions lit up the horizon. The ship could carry maybe 3,000 people, but there were 8,000 survivors who needed evacuation. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. The elderly and wounded would take priority. Healthy adults would have to wait for the smaller ships or find other ways off the planet. Many of the colonists he was leaving behind had families on the ships, but there was no other choice. "We'll send other ships back for you," Jake promised the volunteers who stayed behind to help with the evacuation. He knew it was probably a lie, but these people deserved hope, even if they wouldn't live to see rescue. The USS Defiance lifted off just as the main volcanic chain began erupting. Lava flows consumed what remained of New Haven Colony. The planet that had been humanity's last refuge became a burning wasteland in less than an hour. But the sacrifice had meaning. The destruction of New Haven had eliminated most of the Dominion fleet and sent shockwaves through their command structure. For the first time in the war, alien admirals were questioning whether humans could actually be defeated. Communication. Specialist Kate Reynolds worked frantically to intercept Dominion transmissions as the human fleet fled the dying system. What she heard surprised everyone. The aliens were arguing among themselves about how to handle the human threat. "Some of their factions think we should be destroyed completely," Kate reported to Jake. "But others are saying we might be valuable allies instead of enemies. They're actually debating whether to negotiate with us." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Dominion had never negotiated with any species they considered inferior. The fact that they were even discussing it meant that humanity's desperate resistance had earned some measure of respect. Dr. Helen Carter had been studying the data downloaded from the New Haven crystal systems. What she discovered changed everything. They thought they knew about the war. The ancient architects had left detailed records about their own conflict with the Dominion. According to this data, the Dominion wasn't always a conquering empire, Helen explained as they gathered in the Defiance conference room. They originally formed as a peacekeeping alliance to maintain stability across the galaxy. But over millions of years, they became obsessed with preventing any changes to the established order. So they started destroying younger species to maintain their control, Jake said. Exactly. The architects were apparently the first species to successfully resist them. They built weapons like the crystal systems and eventually transcended physical existence entirely. But before they left, they created tests for future species who might be worthy of their technology. Tony Davis had been analyzing the crystal cores that Lisa extracted from New Haven. The energy patterns were incredibly complex, but they seemed designed to interface with specific types of neural activity. Human brain patterns activated systems that remained dormant for other species. It's like the architects were looking for species with our particular combination of traits, Tony explained. Aggressive enough to fight back, but adaptable enough to find new solutions. Most species are either too peaceful or too rigid in their thinking. The small human fleet began its journey toward the coordinates where Admiral Thompson had found the ancient weapon platform. They were being pursued by the remaining Dominion forces, but the aliens seemed hesitant to engage. The destruction of their fleet at New Haven had made them cautious. Ben Foster pushed the USS Defiance harder than any ship should be pushed. The destroyer's engines were running at dangerous levels, but they needed to reach the weapon platform before the Dominion could bring reinforcements. Every hour of delay increased the chance that they would be overwhelmed. Jake spent his time planning for what they would find at the coordinates. The weapon platform was supposedly the size of a moon and required massive amounts of energy to activate. The crystal cores from New Haven might be enough, but there was no way to test them until they arrived. Lisa worked with her engineering teams to prepare the crystals for integration with alien technology they had never seen before. The energy output was stable, but the interface systems were completely unknown. They would have to figure out how to connect human technology with architect systems while under attack from the Dominion. As they traveled through space, Kate continued monitoring alien communications. The debates within the Dominion command were becoming more intense. Some factions wanted to commit their entire fleet to destroying the remaining humans, while others argued for a negotiated settlement. Their supreme commander is personally coming to deal with us, Kate reported. The transmissions indicate that this leader has never directly engaged in combat before. The fact that they're coming personally means they consider us a serious threat. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity would survive the next few days. They had sacrificed their last colony and most of their people for a chance to activate an ancient weapon they didn't understand. Everything depended on whether the architects had truly left them a way to fight back. The coordinates were still 2 days away when long-range sensors detected massive Dominion reinforcements converging on their location. The aliens were bringing everything they had for a final confrontation. Humanity's survival would be decided at the weapon platform in a battle that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The weapon platform appeared on their sensors like a metal moon orbiting a neutron star. Jake stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and stared at the massive ring structure floating in space. The thing was at least 1,000 kilometers across and covered with technology that hurt to look at directly. "I'm reading power sources throughout the entire structure," Lisa reported from her engineering station. "This thing has been dormant for millions of years, but it's still functional. The architects built it to last." As the human fleet approached the platform, strange lights began flickering across its surface. Scanning beams swept over the ships, and Jake felt a tingling sensation in his mind like something was trying to read his thoughts. The ancient technology was waking up. "We're being scanned by some kind of neural probe," Dr. Helen Carter announced from her science station. "The platform is analyzing our brain patterns and genetic structure. It's trying to determine if we qualify for something." Jake ordered Ben Foster to dock the Defiance with one of the platform's many docking ports. As their ship connected to the alien structure, Jake felt the scanning sensation become stronger. Whatever intelligence ran the platform was very interested in the humans. The docking bay was huge and filled with technology that defied understanding. Holographic displays showed star maps and weapon configurations while streams of energy flowed through crystalline conduits built into the walls. Everything was designed on a scale that made humans feel tiny and insignificant. Jake led a boarding party onto the platform, including Lisa, Helen, and Tony Davis. They needed to find the control center and figure out how to integrate the New Haven crystals with the architect systems. Behind them, the Dominion fleet was only hours away. As they walked through the platform corridors, holographic projections began appearing around them. The images showed tall, graceful beings with large eyes and delicate features. These were the architects in their original physical form before they transcended to pure energy. "Welcome, young warriors," a voice spoke directly into their minds. "We have been waiting for a species with your particular qualities for a very long time." Jake found himself standing in a vast chamber filled with swirling energy patterns. The architect hologram gestured toward displays that showed the history of their war with the Dominion millions of years ago. The images were beautiful and terrible. The Dominion was once a force for peace in this galaxy, the architect explained, but they became afraid of change and growth. They began destroying any species that might challenge their rigid order. We were among the first to resist them. "What happened to your people?" Helen asked. "We evolved beyond the need for physical existence. But before we transcended, we built weapons like this platform to test future species. Only those with the courage to risk everything for freedom can activate our technology." Lisa stepped forward, holding one of the crystal cores from New Haven. "We brought power sources from your systems on our world. Can we use them to activate this platform?" The architect hologram smiled. "Your willingness to sacrifice your own world to strike back at your enemies proves you understand the true cost of freedom. Yes, young engineer, your crystals will power our weapons, but the process requires more than energy." Jake felt the platform systems scanning his mind more deeply. The sensation was overwhelming as the ancient technology analyzed every memory and emotion he had ever experienced. The architects wanted to understand what made humans different from other species. "You possess something the Dominion lost long ago," the architect said. "The willingness to adapt and change, even when it means abandoning everything you thought you knew. Most species become rigid as they advance, but humans remain flexible." Tony's computers began interfacing with the platform systems as the architect technology accepted the New Haven crystals. Energy flowed through conduits that stretched across the entire structure. Weapon systems that had been dormant for millions of years began coming online, but activating the platform required a human consciousness to merge with the architect control systems. Someone would have to sacrifice their individual existence to become part of the ancient technology. Jake knew immediately that it would have to be him. "I'll do it," Jake told the others. "You get back to the ship and prepare for the final battle. Once I merge with this system, I'll be able to control weapons that can reshape star systems." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Jake, there has to be another way. We didn't come this far just to lose you." "This is exactly why we came this far," Jake replied. "Someone has to make the choice that saves everyone else. That's what humans do." Outside the platform, long-range sensors detected the arrival of the Dominion Supreme Commander. The alien leader had brought the largest fleet in galactic history, including dreadnoughts the size of small moons. They intended to end the human threat permanently. Jake placed his hands on the architect control interface and felt his consciousness begin to merge with the ancient systems. His individual thoughts became part of a vast network of energy and information that spanned the entire platform. He could feel the weapon systems responding to his will. The Dominion fleet deployed in attack formation around the neutron star. Their supreme commander had never lost a battle and intended to personally witness the destruction of the last human forces. The alien leader could not understand how such a primitive species had caused so much trouble. As Jake's transformation Completed, he felt his awareness expand across space. The platform's sensors showed him every ship in the Dominion fleet and every weapon they carried. But more importantly, he could feel something else awakening throughout the galaxy. The platform wasn't just a weapon. It was a transmitter designed to broadcast a signal that would awaken the potential of younger species across the galaxy. The architects had created it to break the Dominion's stranglehold on galactic development. "The time has come to choose," the architect voice said in Jake's transformed consciousness. "You can use our weapons to destroy your enemies, or you can use them to free the galaxy from the fear of change. But choose wisely, because this decision will echo across the cosmos for millions of years." Jake felt the weight of that choice as Dominion ships began their attack on the platform. Energy beams and missiles struck the ancient defenses, while his friends fought desperately to buy him time. Everything humanity had sacrificed led to this moment. The platform's weapons charged with energy drawn from the neutron star itself. Jake could feel the power building to levels that could shatter planets or ignite stars. Soon, he would have to decide whether to use that power for destruction or transformation. Jake felt the power of the neutron star flowing through the ancient weapon platform. His consciousness had merged with technology beyond human understanding, and now he controlled forces that could reshape the galaxy. The Dominion fleet surrounded the platform with thousands of ships, but Jake was no longer afraid. Energy beams from the platform lanced out across space, striking Dominion dreadnoughts with the force of solar flares. Alien ships that had seemed invincible moments before began breaking apart as their shields overloaded and their armor melted. Jake felt each destruction like a victory, but he knew this was only the beginning. The USS Defiance and the other human ships took shelter behind the platform's massive structure as the battle raged around them. Lisa watched the tactical displays in amazement as Jake's enhanced consciousness outmaneuvered entire Dominion fleets. His human unpredictability combined with architect technology made him unstoppable. But Jake discovered that the platform's true purpose was not destruction. As he explored the ancient systems with his transformed awareness, he found the real weapon the architects had created. It was a signal that could awaken the dormant potential of any species willing to embrace change and growth. Across the galaxy, younger civilizations that the Dominion had kept suppressed for millennia began receiving the architect transmission. Species that had been forced to remain primitive suddenly found their minds expanding and their technology advancing. The rigid order that the Dominion had maintained for so long started cracking. The Dominion Supreme Commander realized what was happening and ordered a desperate assault on the platform. Massive dreadnoughts fired their most powerful weapons, while elite assault troops tried to board the ancient structure. But Jake's consciousness controlled every defense system, and nothing could penetrate the architect barriers. Then something unexpected happened. The Supreme Commander sent a personal message to Jake offering to negotiate. For the first time in galactic history, the Dominion was willing to discuss terms with a species they had marked for extinction. "Your species has proven itself worthy of respect," the alien leader transmitted. "Join us as equals and help us evolve beyond our current limitations. Together, we can bring peace to the galaxy." Jake felt Lisa and the others listening to the transmission from their ships. Some of them thought the offer should be considered. Dr. Helen Carter argued that cooperation might be better than continued warfare. Even Tony Davis suggested that joining the Dominion could protect other younger species. But Jake's enhanced consciousness could see the deeper truth. The Dominion's offer came from fear, not respect. They wanted to control humanity's chaotic energy and use it to maintain their dying empire. True freedom could not be granted by former oppressors. "You offer us partnership after trying to exterminate our entire species," Jake replied through the platform's communication systems. "You want to use our adaptability to maintain your control over other worlds. That's not peace, it's just another form of slavery." The Supreme Commander's response was immediate. then you have chosen destruction over cooperation. We will mobilize every ship and every weapon in our empire to end your rebellion. You cannot stand against the combined might of 5 galactic civilizations." Jake felt the weight of that threat, but he also felt something else. Throughout the galaxy, the architect signal was reaching more and more suppressed species. Rebellions were starting on hundreds of worlds as younger civilizations realized they didn't have to accept Dominion control. The platform gave Jake a choice between 2 types of power. He could use the weapons to destroy the Dominion completely and become the new galactic tyrant, or he could use the transformation signal to permanently change the nature of galactic civilization itself. Jake thought about Admiral Thompson and all the humans who had died fighting for freedom. He thought about the colonists on New Haven who had sacrificed their world to give humanity one last chance. Their deaths would only have meaning if the galaxy truly changed. Jake activated the full power of the Architect transformation signal. Energy waves swept out from the platform at the speed of light, carrying the genetic and technological keys to advancement. Any species willing to embrace change and growth would receive the tools to break free from Dominion control. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Dominion ships throughout the galaxy found their crews questioning orders and demanding explanations. Younger species that had been kept primitive for millennia suddenly developed weapons and shields that could challenge alien technology. The Supreme Commander's fleet began fragmenting as different factions argued about whether to continue fighting or negotiate. Some ships withdrew while others pressed their attack. The unity that had made the Dominion invincible for millions of years finally shattered. Jake used the platform's weapons, selectively disabling Dominion ships rather than destroying them completely. He wanted to end their ability to suppress other species without committing genocide. The galaxy needed to move beyond the cycle of destruction that had dominated it for so long. As the last Dominion ships retreated, Jake felt his consciousness beginning to separate from the platform systems. The Architect technology had served its purpose, and now it was releasing him back to his own existence. But he was forever changed by the experience. Lisa and the others found Jake in the platform's control center, barely conscious but alive. The ancient technology had given him back his individual identity, but he retained knowledge and abilities far beyond normal human limits. He was still Jake Morrison, but he was also something more. The human fleet began broadcasting messages to civilizations across the galaxy. Jake's transformation had created a new galactic confederation based on cooperation rather than domination. Species that had been enemies for millennia started working together to build something better. New human colonies were established throughout the galaxy as formerly suppressed worlds welcomed Earth's survivors. Each settlement became a center of innovation and adaptation, where different species could share knowledge and grow together. Jake stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting the first interspecies colony and watched ships from dozens of different worlds arriving peacefully. The galaxy was still chaotic and sometimes dangerous, but it was alive with possibilities that the Dominion had tried to destroy. "You really think this will work?" Lisa asked as she joined him at the window. She was now the chief engineer for the Galactic Confederation, and her teams were building things that no single species could have imagined alone. "It has to work," Jake replied. "We wrote our survival in fire and paid for it with blood. Now we get to find out if freedom is worth the price we paid." In the distance, new stars were being born in nebulae that sparkled with every color imaginable. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders that were finally free to be discovered. Humanity had survived not by conquering their enemies, but by proving that even the smallest species could change the course of cosmic history when they refused to surrender their right to exist.